I have a succession question for you. So do you have a Jesse Armstrong kind of landing, ending built into? Because you're coming up on how many seasons of
We're just shooting season 16. Yeah.
wow. So do you have a I had no exit plan. Do
No exit plan. Like, I mean, over the years, like sometimes, in uh, independent production companies get bought up, by these super indies. You have Shine, Endemol, you have Banijay, you have all three, these massive independent companies that have basically just, they bought other independent companies to create a super indie. And over the years, people have approached us, but actually, I think two things. We love what we're doing, and it just never felt like there was never that Succession type shit ton of money that, if I think for some reason, like, I don't know, maybe they just thought we're just way too gay, or just had a hit with a bit of luck or something, whatever. There was never a compelling reason to walk away. Also, though, I think the media, and has just transformed completely in the last, what, 15, 20 years. I mean, even like when cable TV came along, that was radical, right? And MTV, and everyone was like, but now that's all like in the past. And the ScreenAge has sort of moved on from television literally to Instagram and TikTok and all kinds of screens. And so I think we're in completely uncharted waters. And so, to me and Randy, that's exciting and interesting, and not the time to kind of walk away. And I have a feeling that we'll be carried out in a box. That's our exit strategy. Just be just keel over one day, because it's too interesting. And sure, yeah, it is stressful at times, and also, people can be really mean. And so, but ultimately it's just so interesting, and it all feels brand new pretty much every day.
visibility is critical. I mean, you can use that trope of now more than ever. It's
Mm.
important. Um, and each generation that you reach, you have very specific uh, needs and fears and anxieties that are so captured that I think people can watch and recognize themselves within the show. So it
Yeah,
never feels dated or old because it's so relevant.
I hope so. But I mean, I am old. I'm this old white guy. And um but it's just really interesting. And I think sometimes, looking at ScreenAge, I sometimes feel I've raised things without figuring them out. Like, and I think we're only just
Is that the best way to make shit I mean,
yes.
JT Leroy was totally accidental. People looked at it and saw the Taj Mahal, and it took, you remember at the time, I have to explain to people, that it was, I mean, at the time, it was this huge scandal, and people couldn't get that it was built popsicle stick by popsicle stick, and it really was like, what the fuck? So I I I get that, but I think a lot of things are very often like you're riding a surfboard, and that's to me what you and Randy's and the community you created around you. The gift was just responding naturally, like the way I use this metaphor often of someone like the expert surfboard rider, and they just know how to adjust, and then you'll see a mathematician saying, look how they adjusted their hand, and they'll show the mathematics to how that adjusted, but they are just so attuned to the wave. They're not there figuring out, let me move like 5%, this angle,
Right. Um, yeah. Finally, that metaphor makes you think of Doug Rushkoff, his book Media Virus, which I think came out in the early 90s and was such a because his argument of media is that the media and the screen age kind of like is replicating. We think of technology as very unnatural, and you'll read any amounts of criticisms of media and technology and society as if it's all unnatural. But Doug was arguing, of course it's natural. We made it. It's an extension of ourselves. And that the screen age sort of mimics the way plants grow or trees grow. It just sort of iterates out. And he, at the beginning of his book, he has this comparison between old world, which is skiing downhill, which is like you just go down the hill, and snowboarding, which is like where he's like you're using the bumps and you're going sideways to go down, and this whole idea of that today's generation, which gets so often criticized for having a short attention span, his counter to that was this broad attention range. So the judgment that we're more superficial than we were is just the judgment of older people not embracing younger people and not recognizing the unique skill set that people are developing and how visually literate kids are and how sophisticated they are. Like, I have an 8-year-old son, and he was like, I was telling him some story, and he's like, Daddy, that's just backstory. And like he cannot, he's still learning to read and still learning to write, but he knows about backstory and payoff and was telling me all this. I've never talked to him about these things. He's just absorbed it all and, has a level of sophistication that is far above what I had. And yet, here am I thinking, oh, well, you don't really know how to write a sentence yet. You know what I mean? It's like a different skills.
Completely. Well, if you think of what we grew up with on TV, it was like Telly Savalas, Joe Kojak, right? He had one story. It was Beretta. There was like one story to solve. Mm-hmm. And when you would have shows like ER, where you had to follow multiple storylines, and there was backstory finally of everyone, and we were asked to hold on to it for episode after episode. It was a new way of thinking.
Yeah.
And it actually, there was one study that said the population has gotten smarter, and it wasn't because, I guess it was in the 90s, and there was some correlation between the advent of storyline growth and sprouting out, and that we could hold more than one story.
Oh wow, I totally believe that. Like story, I mean, because the centrality of storytelling in culture anyway, because what is culture other than telling stories? And then the sort of the increasingly complicated rich nature of those stories, the Tarantino timeline stuff, but also my kid watching TV, he's like, he'll just go from channel to channel to channel, mainly YouTube, actually, different things on YouTube, but he'll be watching people playing video games. So he's watching the video game being played with the characters in that, and then he's watching someone playing it with their commentary and their backstory and their interaction with their friends. So the whole thing is like, it's like multi-dimensional chess,
Yeah, and it's a very, I longed for that. Like when I played Barbie dolls, I have found very few people that I could play with, because I was all about the backstory, and it was very queer storytelling. And I wanted those multi dimensions, and so that brings me to me, this is so ready made for a film. Is it going to be one?
I don't know.
Who should we ask?
I mean, it would be, yeah. I love that idea. I mean, I wonder if the whole I wonder what the most interesting part of it as a movie or scripted thing would be. Um, but I kind of think it would be that sort of East Village period because it was well, I guess because people seem interested in it now. I mean, at the time it was it wasn't that great. Do you know what I mean? It's only become great in retrospect because people are like, oh my gosh, what was it like? And but
The Access TV shows, and what was that woman's name? That TV show?
oh, Lynn from Voyavision and Robin Bird,
Yeah,
right?
Robin Bird.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. I think it would be like the challenge would be like figuring out what the story is to tell. Yeah, don't know, right?